What's going on, guys? Welcome back. And today, you probably weren't expecting this video at this point in time, but today I'm going to be ranking every MCU movie. Now, usually I'd play music in the background, but I don't want to play music in the background today, mostly because my iPod just doesn't really have enough charge currently. But yeah, we're going to be going through every MCU movie, ranking them in my order from worst to best. Now, this isn't necessarily an order of quality in what I think is the best and worst films. It's just in my personal preference and enjoyment of each film that I'm going to be ranking these in. So, without further ado, let's get started. And my bottom, number 23, we have Avengers Age of Ultron. Now, I don't really think this is a terrible movie. I don't think it's, like, the worst movie ever made. I just think it's really bland, boring. The only redeeming qualities about it, to me at least, are the one scene with Ultron Vision at the end, and then the scene with Hawkeye just the Hawkeye as a character. All the other characters feel bland and boring, and the story is just whatever, and just everything about it is just whatever. Like, I just don't even remember what happens in it. It's so bland, and it's just like, some movies, like, I don't think Civil War is really a great movie. Whoa, oops, sorry about that. But I don't even think Civil War in retrospective is really a great movie, but at least it has creative action sequences. This movie just has, like, the way they defeat the villain is, oh, let's shoot him with a giant laser beam. Great. You know, it's just so bland. And, you know, I understand, like, some people like this more than Avengers, and this is some people's favorite MCU movie. I can't see it at all. It's my least favorite MCU movie, but if some of you can see something in it, then that's okay. But the qualities that it does have are pretty good. The Hawkeye's the best in this movie, I think, that he ever is in the MCU. And I just think it's so bland and boring and whatever. Then we have, moving on here, we have Thor the Dark World. Now, I was actually going to have Civil War in this spot, but I just put this below Civil War because I just don't really care as much about the characters, and it's just, I don't necessarily think it's a bad movie. I think it's a very well, like, directed movie. Like, the visuals and everything are pretty good for the time, and I think are actually hold up pretty well among some other MCU movies that have pretty wonky special effects. So I think it looks pretty good and holds up pretty well. But I just haven't watched it in a while, so this is just like on memory, and I really can't remember what happens in this movie. The only thing I really remember that I like about it is Kat Dennings is really entertaining. I know a lot of people find her really irritating, but I think she's really funny and very entertaining in this and Thor 1. But it's just such a bland movie, and I'm never inclined to rewatch it. Like, when I did my marathon this year, I think this is the only one that I haven't rewatched this year other than AntMan. I think AntMan and this one are the only ones I haven't rewatched this year. Not necessarily because I dislike AntMan, just because I haven't gotten around to it. And yeah, this one I'm never inclined to rewatch it, so it's down here at number 22. Then we have, at number 21, you're going to be pretty surprised about this, Captain America Civil War. Now, I did a video on this, and I just think that it's just such a weird movie to me, because I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's fun and enjoyable, but the thing is, the best things about it are Spider-Man and Black Panther's character arc. But the thing is, they actually have no place in this story. The best parts about Civil War are the things that don't need to be there. I think the story is really messy, and it just has a million plot lines. It's like, does it want to be a story about Steve and Tony? Does it want to be a story about the Accords? Does it want to be about Zemo tearing the Avengers apart? Does it want to be about Wanda and collateral damage? And what does it want to be about? It wants to be about 50 things. Does it want to be about Black Panther? Does it want to be an origin story for Spider-Man? What does it want to be? And just ultimately, the other movies treat it like it has no consequence or stakes, and it's just not a very well structured or integrated movie into the MCU, and it just creates a lot of problems for me. Like, this movie actually is probably the main reason why I don't really love Captain America's ending in Endgame, and I just think it's just a really poor and just disappointing, like, how badly this movie is aged from a standpoint of, like, where it stands in the franchise. It's just really disappointing, like, how the future movies have treated it. And it's just not a very well-constructed movie in quite a few ways. So that is Captain America Civil War at number 20. one, I believe. So then moving on from Captain America Civil War, we have just waiting for it to load here. We have Thor, the first movie. I rewatched it. It's not a bad movie, and it's not a negative experience. That's the thing. None of these movies are really a negative experience, but all the ones at the bottom here are just bland and mediocre, and just ones I'm never inclined to rewatch. There's just nothing necessarily fun or anything about it that pops to me that make me want to revisit it. Loki's a pretty good character in this. He was probably the best villain at the time. I think that like Thor is decent. It's like it gets to a point where you have a scene where Loki goes up to Odin and Anthony Hopkins says "Father," and then he goes "Hey," like it's just. I don't think it's aged very well. I don't think it's like very. I don't know. Once again, I think Kat Dennings is really entertaining, and there's some pretty entertaining sequences, but it's just really. It's just really whatever to me. Just the way that they've developed this character is just so much more interesting than what they do in this and Thor 2 that I'm never really inclined to rewatch it. So, yeah, moving on from there, at number, I believe, 19, we have Captain Marvel. So I don't hate this movie, obviously, nearly as much as many other people do. I actually really enjoyed it when I first watched it. It has quite a few plot holes, and just problems that it creates for the other movies, but I really think that for the first majority of the movie, it's just kind of a meh movie. It's kind of there with Aquaman to me. I really loved Aquaman, and then I rewatched Aquaman, and then it just became kind of meh. Like, it's a fun adventure, and it's just fun. Like, it's plain fun for the most of it. And then it's just, I think Carol Danvers, Brie Larson, is actually pretty good as Carol Danvers or Captain Marvel. I just think in the final act, it's just so uninteresting to just see her flying around, being invincible and killing people and destroying ships. And it's just really not interesting to watch. So I think, like, her character's really interesting, but it's like, who am I? I need to find out who I truly am. And then once she finds out who she truly is, she just becomes, like, OP and just destroys everything. And it's just not very interesting to watch. But still, I think it's a very fun, entertaining movie, and I don't think it nearly deserves as much hate as it's gotten since its release from some people. I think Brie Larson is pretty good as the character, but she's not very good in Endgame. But anyway, moving on from there, we have Guardians of the Galaxy. This is going to be my biggest unpopular opinion. I have Guardians of the Galaxy at number 18, I believe. It's not a negative experience, and I really enjoyed it while watching it, but it's like, when I actually thought about it while I was watching it, I was just like, bland. Like, I think that's just the one thought that came to my head, was just bland at this point in time. I mean, I really, like, obviously I appreciate this movie for introducing these characters into the MCU, and they're really fun and enjoyable, and I really miss old Groot, but some of, like, Bradley Cooper's lines as Rocket, some of the special effects on Rocket just look really bad, honestly, when I rewatched it, and just the actual, lining of the, I don't even know what it is, but just the way that they connect, like, Bradley Cooper's recorded lines with Rocket in this movie in particular just sounds really weird. Like, it doesn't sound like he's there, it just sounds really weird to me. So that's just a nitpick. But yeah, the villain's really bland. It's just kind of, I don't know. I just think at the Guardians 2, you'll be surprised at how high that movie is on the list. But this movie is just so whatever to me at this point in time. I appreciate it for introducing the characters, but I don't really have much to say about it other than that. It's just kind of there and okay. So, yeah, anyway, moving on from Guardians 1, we have AntMan. So I don't think AntMan's a bad movie. It's the only movie I haven't rewatched so far this year of the MCU. But yeah, just it's really fun and enjoyable, and I like it quite a bit. I think I might like Ant-Man and the Wasp a bit more. I've rewatched it more recently, so maybe this movie is better. It's just just from like my most recent memory, it hasn't really stuck in my memory. I don't really remember too much about it, honestly, at this point in time. But I think it's a good movie. I think I would enjoy. I'm more inclined to rewatch it, and I think it's more fun and original and creative than Guardians and so like all the other movies behind it, but just not too high on the list overall. Next up, at number... What number is this? Number 16, we have The Incredible Hulk. Now, this is going to be kind of a weird one for some people. I really enjoy this movie. It might just be the style of storytelling it goes with, but I just really enjoy stories that just are like this kind of style of like on the run, and it's just a really enjoyable movie to me. Like the first little bit of it's kind of whatever. The acting is crap. Like from everyone, like Liv Tyler, Edward Norton. Some of them you can tell are having fun. Like Tim Roth is having fun. William Hurt is pretty good, and Tim Blake Nelson is having a pretty good time. But just Liv Tyler and Edward Norton just terrible in this movie. Like especially Liv Tyler, just terrible acting from them. But just once it gets into that little middle to mid section, it just gets really fun, and it's just I'm just a sucker for those kind of on the run, hiding from the government kind of stories. I don't know, just some part of me just really likes those. So I just really enjoy the middle section. But then once you get into that final act, it just gets like CGI nightmare. It's terrible special effects. I think it just looks awful in the final act, but that's pretty much all I have to say about Incredible Hulk. I just really enjoy it overall. Then at number 15, we have Black Panther. So I don't hate Black Panther, obviously. I really enjoy it, and I think it's a very significant cultural movie, and probably the most significant movie, like culturally, out of the MCU. And I just think I oversaturated my viewings of it. I watched it way too many times, and just kind of got bored of watching it. I don't think it's a boring movie. I just don't quite love it as much as I originally did, and I'm more like prone to its flaws. I've realized its flaws. I just don't really have much to say about it. I really enjoy it, and I'm thankful for the like impact that it's had, like the cultural impact it's had, but just not really. I'm not really inclined to rewatch at this point in time. I just oversaturated myself watching it. I think far too many times. Then we're gonna get to my largest unpopular opinion at number 14. Number 14, coming up here. Hopefully it's going to load for me. Number 14, Avengers Endgame. I know that everyone's going to be mad at me about this choice and not putting it at like number 1 or whatever. But just Avengers Endgame. So, like, I've done many videos on it, and just some great elements. It's just a mess, to me at least. It's just a really big mess. And it's not well constructed as a lot of the other ones, other MCU movies. It's enjoyable though, and I think that among the other ones that I've just listed, all the other movies that are behind it, I care the most about the characters in this movie, out of all those. But yeah, just some things that just really bother me and disappoint me about it. So just it's a good movie, and I don't think it's a bad movie, and I'm glad that so many people enjoy it. But just for me, it's just not the greatest Marvel film. So next up at, I believe, number 13, we have AntMan and the Wasp. I've watched this more recently than the first one. Just really, really fun movie. Just a very enjoyable ride. Not much significance and not much emotion or really anything like extraordinary portrayed in this film, but just a fun ride. And just, I think one of the best Marvel movies at just being fun and being what it is. Not much to say about it, but just really enjoy it. Might be below Endgame later on. We'll have to wait and see if my opinion changes there. Next up, we have Iron Man 2. This is going to be kind of another weird one. You're going to be like, you put Iron Man 2 above Endgame. I just really like Iron Man 2. I think it's a really well, constructed. I don't know about if constructed is the right word, but just some really good character development for Tony Stark as a hero, and just some really important stuff that is, discussed more in later films, like his relationship with his father, which is brought back in Endgame as well. And I think it's a very important piece for the Iron Man character. So in that regard, I really enjoy the movie, and I think it's just a really good, solid movie. Like overall, just not just out of the MCU, but just a solid movie in general. Just really enjoy Iron Man 2. I don't care what anyone says, I just really enjoy it. Yep, I think that's it for Iron Man 2. Then getting into, I believe, number 11, we have Thor Ragnarok. I keep bringing it up before, even after you see the poster, But Thor Ragnarok, just such a fun, lively movie. Just like Black Panther, I've oversaturated myself watching it too many times in a row and just got bored of watching it, and the jokes just didn't work as well for me. I've just oversaturated my viewings of it. But I just still really enjoy it. I think it's the best Thor movie, and it's just a really fun ride. But I really oversaturated my viewings of it, but I think I like it just that bit more than Black Panther. Not much to say about it. I've talked about it in the past. I really like Thor Ragnarok a lot, and just such a fun movie. Then, moving on from that, we have Spider-Man Far From Home, the most recent movie. I really like this movie. I liked it more the second viewing. I can't wait to get it on DVD soon. But it's just kind of... I don't see how people... Like, I've heard people saying, oh, it's really... I like it more than Homecoming, and it's really on par with the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. And I don't hold the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies as in such high regard as other people. But just for people to say that they think this is on par with that, I can't even really see from their perspective how this could be on par with those, because of how, like, Holy Grail-ish they're portrayed to be among many people. But I really enjoy it. I think it's a really fun movie. I love Spider-Man. He's my favorite hero. So I think maybe Thor Ragnarok's a better movie. I just like it. It has that a little bit of an edge above it because it's more recent in my memory and just feels more fresh. Some things that don't really need to be in this movie, like the Skrull twist. But just the ending is great. But, with this whole Spider-Man MCU crap going on, I don't know what's happening on with the future of the character. But it's a really enjoyable movie. I think really well filmed as well. Some really nice locations. And, yeah, I really like Far From Home. I just don't really quite love it as much as other people. So we are now in the top 10. That was number 10. So next up we have Iron Man 3. You're going to be really surprised to see this movie this high on the list. I just really like Iron Man 3. I think that some of the other movies, even some of my favorites, suffer from having to have that connective tissue from the other movies and having to connect all the other movies, and then they create plot holes and problems, especially with Age of Ultron and Civil War. This one I just think stands alone on its own just really well. I think it's really funnily written. Like, the writing is really funny and really clever and witty. Just some of the best Iron Man action. It's very creative, very fun, and I just think as a movie that stands on its own, it's just a really fun movie. And just, like, not having to connect to all the other movies gives it this sense of fun and just fresh and uniqueness. And I just really like it. I really like Iron Man 3. I know everyone's going to be really surprised about it being this high. So it's Iron Man 3 at number 9. So then next up we have Doctor Strange. This one just grows on me and grows on me. Just really, all the acting I think is really great. The villain is kind of bland, but it created a very great meme I think a lot of people brought up. The visuals are fantastic. Just a really good movie. I think it's just a really solid movie overall. Just some of the best stuff presented in the MCU in this movie. Not just from, like, a visual angle, but just from an emotional angle. But I just really enjoy Doctor Strange. It's just grown and grown on me, and I just think it's a really good MCU movie. So that's Doctor Strange at number 8. Some of these I just don't really have much to say about other than just how I really like them. So then we have Captain America, the Winter Soldier, up here at number 7. Winter Soldier I know a lot of people love. I really love Winter Soldier. I think it's a great movie. And it just has some of the best, like, most mature subject matter, out of all the MCU. But it's just kind of held back by some of that stuff that the future movies kind of wreck it. Like, the stakes of S.H.I.E.L.D. being destroyed, and just some of the interesting stuff set up, like with Brock Rumlow or Crossbones. There's nothing really done with it in Age of Ultron and Civil War, and that's those movies' fault. But as a movie on its own, like, not having to depend on those, and that's what I'm saying, like, Iron Man 3, I think, doesn't have to depend on those, so there are less plot holes that the other movies create for it. With this movie, it has plot holes and just things that, like, annoyances, because of the way the other movies don't really treat its stakes with any significance. But overall, Winter Soldier, as a standalone piece for the character of Steve Rogers, is fantastic, so it's at number 7. Then you're going to be surprised, I actually have First Avenger just one slot above that movie. And the reason being just the stuff that was set up in this movie and the structuring and the way it takes its time through the entire, like, I think, first hour and a half of this movie is just incredible. Like, the actual journey of the character is just so good, and it's like, I think Winter Soldier is a really great movie with little flaws sprinkled in here and there, and then just its stakes not really being treated with that much respect. This movie feels like that everything in the first hour and a half is just so good, and then it gets kind of a little bit towards the ending, but everything before that is just so good. So I think I'll take a movie that has just a really like amazing hour and a half beginning portion than a really great movie with just flaws sprinkled in and then not being treated like the best by the future movies. I think I just like this movie just a tad bit more than Winter Soldier, at least at the moment. Then next up we have Spiderman Homecoming, and just such a fun movie at number 5. So this is the top 5 right here. Movie's so fun. Homecoming is just so solid. There are little, like, I did a review on it and I sounded pretty critical of the movie, but those are just flaws necessarily. None of them really take me out of the experience. This movie is just so fun and solid, and just as a person who loves Spider-Man, this was one of the greatest theater experiences I've had probably in the last 5 years. It's just so fun and lively, and just Tom Holland embodying the character in just such an incredible way. Just really made me feel really happy, and the movie just makes me feel happy. Like it just oozes this sense of happiness and fun and like cheeriness, and it's just so optimistic, I guess. I just love this movie. I love Spider-Man Homecoming. So that's why it's at number 5. Then at number 4 we have Iron Man. I know everyone's talked about it, and some people maybe think it's overrated, maybe a little bit. I don't. I think Iron Man's incredible. I think it's a great movie. My dad actually said he thinks Obadiah Stane is the second best villain in the MCU, which I don't necessarily agree with, but just a solid movie. So funny, so well paced, just awesome. It's just awesome. Like, that's just what I can say about it. It kicked off everything. It feels so fresh and unique, even looking back at it 11 years later. Even now, just looking back at it, like, for the time, yes, and even now, just such a fresh, unique movie, and just rewatching it is like a breath of fresh air, you know? It's just so good. Iron Man is awesome. I love this movie. Then number 3, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I rewatched this movie again. I know some people really don't like this movie, and a lot of people have it pretty low on the list, but I just love this movie. It's so funny. In the beginning portion of the movie, it's just really funny, and there are some little flaws that I have with it here and there, but just overall, the experience and just the emotions, there's so many emotions felt towards the end of this movie. Just the emotions, big emotions felt towards the end, and just the last shot being of Rocket just standing there crying, realizing, you know, that he finally loved. It's just heartbreaking, you know, and it's just improves like characters like Yondu so much, and it's just such a. I love this movie. I know not as many people do, but I'm sure that there are probably many others that appreciate this movie as much as I do, but I just really appreciate this movie for everything that it does well, which is pretty much almost everything. Like, the villain is such a great improvement above Volume 1. But anyway, moving on to number 2, we have The Avengers, the first film. Now, this movie, I rewatched it again last night, and I love this movie. I don't care what anyone tells me about whatever the hell. Sorry, excuse my language, but just, I rewatched it. The music, Alan Silvestri, man, just amazing. Like, I recognize so many cues from Endgame that he brought back. Such a great composer. Just the structuring of it is great. The banter, just, like, it's just so well done. And just rewatching it, I never thought it had much of an emotional core. Rewatching it, just knowing where these characters end up now in Endgame, man, just so good, just so solid and fun, and just so fresh. It's just such a fresh, just enjoyable movie. The Avengers is. I love The Avengers. Man, just so great. But then, you know, number 1, of course, you probably all expected it, Avengers Infinity War. I thought more about it. This is my favorite MCU movie. It is packed with incredible characters, and just the way that a lot of these characters end up, like, by the end of this movie, and just, like, where the characters go throughout the story, just so well paced and constructed, and everything is felt. The humor is felt, the emotions are felt, just everything is felt to such a great degree. I think over the course of the story, it just makes some characters more interesting than others. I don't know how to describe how much I love this movie, but just even people that aren't necessarily big fans of the MCU, I know even, maybe not loved, but just really enjoyed the movie for what it was. And I just love this movie just so much, like, just for what it is. It just excels so well at it, as being what this franchise needed and what this movie wanted to be. It just excels so well at all of it. And even like my brother, he's not a very huge Marvel fan at all. He doesn't even really like the movies that much. But he even told me, like, the other day, like, I actually really enjoyed that movie. Like, or even just enjoyed it to some degree. Like, it's just, everyone enjoyed it to some degree. It's just such a fresh, or not even just fresh, but just unexpected movie, I think. When I saw the trailer, I was like, oh, cool, another Avengers movie. But it's so much more than that. And I appreciate this movie so much for what it is. And so, yeah. No, not Endgame. Not Endgame at number one. As a huge fan of the MCU, Endgame's okay. It's flawed. But this movie just takes the cake for me, at least. I love Infinity War so much. So, yeah, this was a long video. I hope you all stuck with me. This is going to be the last video I make on the films in the MCU. I will probably make more Lego videos, but I've just done so many MCU videos, I've burnt myself out. So, here we go. This is the king of all of my MCU videos, my ranking of every film. So, if you guys can, let me know. This took a lot of persuading. Like, I wrote 3 different lists where I switched all the places around. Not like the top 5, the top, like, 10, I'd say, pretty much stayed the same. But below that, it was really hard. So, if you guys can, give me at least your top 5, and then if you can, give me your ranking of all the movies. Or at least the ones you've seen, if you haven't seen all of them. But yeah, just please let me know all your thoughts in the comments below on the MCU movies and on this video. And as always, I hope you guys have a great day. Take care.